Okay, so let's quickly do one more. Again, I started with CMMI, just to give you an idea. C2M2, give you an idea. Now let's talk about NIST itself, the one we'll talk about. Then we jump into the actual assessment real quick. Okay. I've actually I've actually given you all the gist of it, but I'll still go through it for formality so I don't miss anything. But really the content itself, I've talked about it. Okay. So Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, before this 2.0 came out, so I'll tell you, for many years we used 1.1 and it was pretty good. The whole world was really embracing it. The only thing that happened that changed, and you get to know it, because somebody can ask you in an interview actually, that what's in your opinion, what is the, maybe they won't ask as much now, but 2 years ago, they added a new function called govern, which we'll get into in a bit. So what was the evolution? What changed when they brought in that 2.0? They added a new function called govern. Which function did they add again? Let me ask you guys. Can we all type it? Which was the new function that was added to this framework? And anytime you hear the word govern, don't stress it. All it's saying is that, let me give you a story. In the past, some of you might have heard of Sabin-Oxley, WorldCom, Enron collapsed in 2004 or so, 2002. And the leadership said they were not aware of some of the actions taken by their subordinates. The US Congress passed the law, Sarbanes-Oxley 404, that mandates leadership to also sign and attest on some of those financial records now and the controls. And you're liable to 15 years in jail and excessive fine. So now you can't say, I was not aware. It's not going to fly. The same thing applies to cyber now that, okay, let's sneak in govern. When we do assessment in the past, govern was not part of it. So we'll do assessment and it will cover many areas, but it will not address leadership. Anytime you hear govern, just think of leadership. So this time around, you cannot, there's no hiding place. There is a segment dedicated to govern, to leadership. So you have to also ask questions around leadership, specifically to the board level, to ask them, are people within the board aware and knowledgeable about cybersecurity? Is that part of the process, right? Which was not before, right? So in the past also, the scope was limited to critical infrastructure, but now it's not just critical infrastructure, it's all organization. We can make sure we have an assessment of all organization. It can be used for different organizations, not just critical infrastructure. Then, of course, it enhanced third-party involvement and programs, supply chain in general. And remember again, 70% of US critical infrastructure organization really use this framework. So most of your refineries, your nuclear station, your power grid, transportation, they use this as a framework to benchmark their security control. It's a big deal, okay? And you can see here, in general, we used to have identify, protect, detect, respond, recover as the core area of the focused area for cybersecurity in general. So how do we identify the risk? How do we protect the organization? How do we detect potential threats? How do we respond if there's an incident? How do we recover from that incident? But now we are saying it's not just that now, let's sneak in govern, meaning your leadership oversight, the policies built, the knowledge of creating security awareness culture within your organization. So now it's more than just identify threats, protecting, detecting, respond, recover. Those were the big ones before. But govern just changed the game now because now your top leadership are going to be very involved also in the process. So very big deal. Then also you notice risk management is always driving most strategy in general. At the end of the day, we talk about 830, the risk management side of things, and we have a segment next week. We'll do risk assessment, risk management work. But 830, which we talked about, focused on the risk management side of things. There are some Case studies, I'll skip these ones, but you can read those ones if you want to. Now, 853, let me ask you to see if you're paying attention. What does this cover? 853, what does this cover? A NIST, 853, what does it cover? Security and privacy. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Sissy. Thank you, Jonah. Please don't forget. Um, yep, yep. Okay, somebody says SOX was developed by British financial analysts, if my memory serves me right. Um, Sorry, Mr. Yusuf. It was actually formed by the US Congress, Senate, and the House when there was a breach. So there was a law that was passed just to ensure any publicly traded company in the Security Exchange Commission, they have to be in compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley. So it's not optional. So that's why you notice that they have to comply. If you are publicly traded, you have to be part of that Sarbanes-Oxley. Okay, so 853, we can agree security and privacy. And today you touch it, so don't worry, okay? All right, let's move on. You can read that case study too. This just talks a little bit about hardening your environment. Now, let me tell you one funny thing. A lot of times you'll be surprised how much people get compromised within the organization as a result of basic settings. So a new system is deployed in your environment, and I just forgot to change the default password. If I send you Cisco devices, some of them have certain default password, and somebody just forget to change it, or somebody forget to shut down a port that was supposed to be disabled and it's enabled in their system. Something as simple as that would just cause a lot of compromise within your organization. The painful thing is that those are very easy to fix, you know? And the other thing you can notice is that, I think it was SolarWind that happened a while back. A patch was pushed to the organization and they just forgot to install the patch, a security patch. So, something as simple as, okay, how do we monitor our patches? If it's a critical risk, if it's a high risk, if it's a medium risk, following those basic guidelines at times could just save your organization a lot of mess and, problems in the long term. Another thing you will notice, like I said, NIST has a lot of areas in general. The big ones we focus on, of course, you see us 853, 800, CSF 2.0, 800 and 161 for supply chain, 61 for incident response, 30 for risk management. There's also 88 for sanitization, meaning if I'm decommissioning a device, hardware, our SOP for, you know, cleaning the records on the hardware, whatever it is, the point is that it gives us a guide. Now, never build a policy, a procedure, a guideline without sneaking in some of these standard or framework into your build. The reason you are doing that is you want to make people shut up. If you build a policy for me, and I know because I've been on the other end too, I've been an external auditor, right? If you build a policy for me and I realize you did not match it or benchmark it to a leading framework, you force me to probe your product. But one of the ways to make me shut up most times is if I realize your product is mapped to some of this leading standard or framework, people just keep quiet and say, oh, well, they've mapped it to this framework. Because what you're doing is that you're saying, hey, this section that I added was a recommendation from this standard or framework and I'm mentioning where it stated this is important. So we just keep quiet because you know that, okay, they've done a good job. I mean, most times, except maybe there are some obvious gaps, but most times it will make people just go away. But if you don't do it, you make people just be on your neck and they will start probing more. Okay, so you're trying to avoid people probing more into your business. So always do that. We talked about supply chain earlier on, 800 and 161. Within the supply chain side of things, You would agree with me. Let me ask you, are all vendors the same? And why not? Are all my vendors the same? And why not? I like that. Maria said, no, needs are different. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Okay. I agree. So, because think about it, it depends on what the vendor is doing. If you're handling my client's data, financial record, health record, sensitive information, critical information. So, if you have direct access to my system, critical information for, think about it, some vendors are handling our defense information, our nuclear information, our power grid information, our now data AI's data center information. There are vendors handling them. So the question is that those would be considered critical, most likely. Then, if you are handling sensitive data, I may consider it tier two, I. So again, every environment is different. It doesn't mean there's a one size for everybody that this is what they will do. But this is a very good way where people really take the time and they will break it down and say, okay, tier one, tier two, tier three, whatever tier system they have, that's okay. As long as it makes sense to you and you can sneak in 861 to the documentation I have. So you will see us in, I think, next on Wednesday or so. We're going to build policies, procedures, and we're going to map it to 800. And, if you're building on supply chain, you map on, if you are building on privacy, if you are building for incident response, whichever one you're building, as you build, you would also map it to policy. Don't stress it. This is our world has changed. So you're not going to have a stress with it. These are 10 minutes work now. If you prompt it well, we can map it in a way that it will just give you, it will map it in a very effective way that, and these are real projects. These are projects a lot of our folks have worked on. Sometimes there are policies built, especially old policies, they are not mapped to a good framework. So people want to know that the policy I have, is it really reflecting on the big risk areas? So, and we can do that easily now. Okay, let's go to the next one. Case study, I'll skip this. Solar wind, I think we talked about solar wind already, so I'll skip it. You guys can play with that later. Incident response, we talked about 861. Okay. And what does that cover in general for incident response as a whole? Incident response says, okay, preparation. Do we have a plan? Detection and analysis. If we have a plan, how do we detect if there's an incident? Let me ask you, how do you detect there's an incident in your organization, a security incident? Go ahead and type. All right. After this, we'll take a 10 minutes break before we do our work. I like that. IOC indicator of compromise, alerts, breach. Okay. Issues. Okay. I agree. All right. All right. All right. Okay. You get it. Then containment. Containment, we know there's an incident. We've triggered our incident response plan. How do we contain these threats, right? Then we contain the threat. Maybe we have network segmentation. Then we've segmented and said, okay, this is where the threat is. We've removed it from the network. Then we are trying to eradicate it. We are applying patches, antiviruses. We are putting all those stuff to make it happen. Then we're trying to recover our data ultimately, right? Recover the information, get it all our backup and recovery, 3-2-1 process. And ultimately, once we've recovered, we have a post-incident event whereby we now do our lesson learned. What can we learn from the experience? And what are the key roles within your incident response team? You have a lead that is responsible to make sure and coordinate the response. You have to work with your legal team. You have to work with your communication team. Many times, for most people, they would have a PR team, public relation. If it's a big company, they always have retainership with companies. They will just pay for focusing on helping them to mitigate and figure out the communication side. I don't know if you guys remember there was a year that there was a breach in there was a spillage in oil and gas, and I think it was BP then in Louisiana somewhere, and the CEO was everywhere, but because he was not a PR person, it was a disaster for the organization. So in such a case, you want someone that is a different PR to help you manage it. Then of course, forensic team, their job is to make sure they are trying to preserve evidences. They are doing all the analysis of what has happened, and they document everything in good time. Okay, and I'll skip these use cases. You can read that yourself later. Another thing I'll just call out before we jump to our break is remember again, at the end of the day, we have to have a good backup strategy, right? We have what we call recovery time objective, which is the maximum allowable downtime. This is the max downtime we could have before it becomes a crisis for our organization. We also have recovery point objective, maximum allowable data loss that we can lose. You can imagine a company that has hundreds of or thousands of clients. Their maximum allowable data loss might be maybe 2 days, because within that 2 days, they can manually figure a way to quickly enter the information. After 2 days, they might say, okay, at this point, we are in trouble. We can't survive. I don't know, if you guys noticed during the sad event of 9/11 in what year was it? 2011, right? 2011. Oh, yeah, about how long was 9/11? 2000 and, sorry, 2000. Oh, it's such a long time. What year was that again? 2001, sorry, 2001. Yeah. So you know what happened after that incident? A lot of companies that were in the Twin Tower lost virtually everything. At that point, we were not big on cloud, so people didn't have a lot of backup and recovery strategy in place. It was such, and we are talking of hundreds of big organizations that were in those buildings. So a lot of those data got wiped out. So some of them that had insurance were able to file claims and get something out of it, but a lot of people did not recover from it. From that incident in 2001. Um, at the end of the day, you can do everything right. If your culture and training and awareness is bad, there's no way you can survive. Because the technology and tools, yes, that's one thing, but you can see the foundation here. This is the foundation for everything. The culture, the awareness, your governance. If your leadership and governance is not there, this is the core foundation of everything. If they are not aware, they are not pushing for a culture of security, it's a disaster. There's nothing that will change that for sure. Okay. All right. Then, of course, your executive reporting, your leadership, you want them to have a good knowledge of what's going on. There's mean time to detect. What is the average time to detect? Then, mean time to remediate, average time to fix the issue. Can we all type this before we go to break? MTTD, everybody, MTTD and MTTR. I'm just saying, how long would you recover and how long would you detect it? If your detection is bad, the timing, that's a problem for us, right? So, all right, so we'll take a 10 minutes break, then we'll come back. Let's make it 5 minutes. Haha.